All right, welcome back, folks. This is the Unplanned Show, where we talk about things that kind of go bump in the night and the sort of the unplanned work that comes along and disrupts your day, takes you off task, but can also have a material impact on your business. And true to the name, we are pretty unscripted and unplanned. We do like to plan our guest lineup. And with me today, we've got James Zhao from Snowflake and Manu Raj from PagerDuty. And we're going to be digging into data ops in the age of LLMs, large language models, which are some of the core capabilities powering the generative AI features that you are probably excited about and looking into. So that's the show today. Let me just pull up our next couple of shows before we dive into today's topic. I always forget to add, not always, but lately, I forget to add that I want to show this upcoming episodes. So next week we will have Heath Newburn talking about defining AI ops. So that'll be a fun one on another sort of angle on the AI topic. The following week, we will have Heather Hinton, PagerDuty's Chief Information Security Officer, talking about the death of the single security pane of glass. And then still working on more of the lineup, but we will have James Urquhart on August 14th talking about flow architectures. So stay tuned and come back again for future episodes. But today, let's come back to our topic at hand. James is a product manager at Snowflake. Manu leads our analytics and data engineering here at PagerDuty. So I came across these two gentlemen coming across this article and digging into it a little bit, that talked about actually how to use some new capabilities from Snowflake with PagerDuty, and had taken a lot of input from Manu and other folks on his team, focus on how we're actually using this capability at PagerDuty. But it seemed like something very useful for a lot of folks. And given just all the news and noise around generative AI and the underlying architectures that go into that, it seemed like it could be a useful topic to kind of expand on. So before we get into too many questions, I do have just kind of a baseline get to know you. Coffee or tea? Manu, let's start with you. Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
Oh, I'm a tea drinker.
Okay.
And that too with milk.
Okay. And thank you for that. That was my next question, because that's like a make or break conversation starter right there. How do you take your tea? And then what about you, James? Are you coffee or tea drinker?
Caffeine gives me the shakes pretty badly, so I mostly stick with tea, unless you offer me like an affogato, in which case I'm all over it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the ice cream will just mellow out the shakes for all kinds of reasons. All right, well, I'm with you. I'm drinking tea today, as I do most days. So always good to get to know where people stand on the tea versus coffee question. So let's just start with kind of today, or like the baseline, if you will. And James, feel free to kind of add in sort of what you sort of see Snowflake customers doing. Manu, like your teams are responsible for data engineering pipelines, but in terms of building resilient data pipelines, like what's kind of the need to know for folks? What are the things that work well, or the current latest capabilities that folks should be aware of and taking advantage of?
So data pipelines are always, we look at it from the source onwards. Like whenever we look at data pipelines, right? We look at it from the beginning onwards, even in the age of AI, from source systems all the way to the end of the system, which is a data warehouse or a AWS S3 system, where from wherever AI takes the data for its consumption. So whenever we look at it, we look at it from a perspective of, okay, is the source systems that are giving the data, is it giving the right data? How do we maintain the data quality of that? And how do we measure the data quality? So is it a Salesforce system? Is it from a product? If it is from our product, how do we measure the data quality over there? And then from there, we look at the systems that are taking the data. So we use different tools to pull the data from those systems. Then those systems, are they able to pull the data efficiently in it? Are those systems, do they have fail safe systems in it? If they fail, are they able to restart from the point of failure? If they are real time streaming systems, are they able to generate and alert the people that are responsible for it? And then from there, if there are any incidents happening, will they alert the data ops teams? And then it goes to the data warehouse where the failures happen. So in this case, we use Snowflake as our data warehouse. So then from that data warehouse, whether the consumption layer could be any LLM system, it could be any data science systems, it could be any consumption layer. So and we have scheduling systems like Airflow in our ecosystem. So a data operations in this age consists of all these, and every part of it is part of the ecosystem that we need to be looking at.
Is that, to just like ask a follow-on question, and then I want to ask James a little bit about, you know, across a lot of different users, like what becomes the impact? But, you know, Manu, when you look at this, is this something, has it gotten more complex, or have things gotten simpler as we've learned more about data engineering in the last, you know, decade or so, since we kind of started to have those first app experiences and moving to kind of modernizing our business intelligence? Give me kind of the, like, have we gotten better at this, or is it just getting harder?
It has become infinitely more complicated because now you are dealing with cloud systems, on-prem systems, a mixture of both. We are dealing with multiple. For example, in our own ecosystem, if you look at it, we get data from um, 20 or 25 cloud systems, and I'm sure PagerDuty is a relatively was born in the cloud, so we are completely on cloud. But if you look at any other companies where I talk to the system, they have cloud systems plus on-prem systems, so you can imagine the complexity that is coming in. And similarly, the data integration tools that are bringing in the data itself is now a mixture of both cloud and on-prem, and that is combining. The data quality tools are now is also a mixture of it. Data warehouses tools are also a mixture of it. BI tools also in that same situation. Now with the LLM tools coming in, right? That is also it. So the complexity of the data operations has now transformed into a mixture of all these tools coming together, which is where data ops is now in a very challenging situation now. And we cannot rely on emailing as a means of communicating with the data operations team anymore as a system. We need the DevOps mechanism of operations as a structured way. The software, the software mechanism, the rigor, the discipline of DevOps to be in data operations as well. And PagerDuty has been the standard tool in DevOps for a long.
Mhm.
The same discipline we are utilizing in data ops, where all these teams send signals into one single tool, and we are able to correlate across multiple signals, right? So if some issue is happening on one tool, let's say in the AI tool, we are seeing something, or in the data science model, we are having some error happening on an incident, then we are able to correlate this is coming up from this particular cloud tool. And we are able to correlate across systems coming from on-prem cloud, and we are able to showcase that, hey, this is an issue coming in. So it has definitely becoming complicated, and it is more becoming complicated because of the AI tools as well.
Yeah, I was looking at the, Andreessen Horowitz emerging LLM architecture, and there's a lot of boxes and arrows
Oh yeah.
in that architecture. And, there's some familiar pieces, there's a caching layer and you can use Redis. I'm like, ooh, that looks familiar. But, then there's a bunch of pieces like, and now there's a vector database. And over here, then that's your foundational models. But yeah, I that's interesting to hear that that's just the latest chapter in a book that's been written over the last 10 years about mounting complexity in data ops. And I also think the other side of the story is the kind of the business importance. So I wasn't sure, like, James, if this might be something you want to chime in on a little bit, but like, this is getting more complex, but there's the other side is there's increasing dependency on it. What do you see in terms of when there's a disturbance in the force, right? Like something in all those different places where the data is getting pulled, and like each one needs its own self-contained, fail-safe mode. Like when any of these pieces breaks down, what do customers experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think what we're seeing mirrors sort of the complexity that Manu brought up. We have a lot of customers now who are dealing with a lot of different sources of data that they want to integrate, whether that's for, this new AI and LLM related stuff they're interested in exploring, whether they're starting to think about how do I have native apps within the cloud that I can build upon. And all of that comes from this idea of, okay, well, first I need to have a strong, resilient data pipeline for this. And so the kind of features that we are getting asked for from customers and that we are spending time on this data pipeline side, are largely around things like, hey, I want to more easily ingest streaming data. I want to be able to dynamically declare what I want ingested. I want more observability into this whole thing, whether that means having, an event table like system that helps you manage some of this, whether that's having better alerts and notifications, both within Snowflake as well as instrumenting that so it works with the rest of my tech stack. All of that is the kind of stuff that we're seeing happen in the data pipeline area, where customers are hungry to have more of this stuff made available. What we see is a lot of customers saying, Snowflake started maybe as a data warehouse for me, but as they're moving more into this idea of a data cloud, they're seeing that as a more central place where, hey, I need all of this stuff to work seamlessly. I have way more complex things. So not only do I need you at Snowflake to provide me more flexibility, but also to make it easier for me to do this stuff so it's hard to mess it up. And so I think that's just been a general trend, and what the excitement we're seeing around things like deploying ML models, thinking about LLMs more broadly, and how you as a company can make use of this, or you as an organization can make use of this. It's only accelerating this trend. And so you're seeing just more complexity throughout.
Yeah. And I want to come back in a minute to, some of the announcements that Snowflake made just last month at the big user event. But before we get to that, you mentioned data observability, and that being kind of, this sort of fits in hand with data ops, and to Manu's point about how do we bring many of these sort of core competencies that we've developed for DevOps, but bring this to the data world, and how we're not just trying to build a set and forget for our data pipelines and analytics environments, but it's an ongoing rigor. Observability is a key part of that. So, what this kind of all started because I kind of came across something that was about a Snowflake observability capability getting used with PagerDuty. So tell us a little bit about the data observability side and what Snowflake's been doing.
Yeah. So I think traditionally, when Snowflake was primarily thought of as a data warehouse, we had lots of customers who were just saying, oh, this might just be a place to park my data, and that's fine. I definitely don't think that's true anymore. We have lots of customers doing all sorts of things that are beyond just storing data within Snowflake. And so what that means is we've had to work a lot more on making it possible for our customers to understand what's happening within Snowflake, and doing some of that more natively while still allowing them to combine the power of Snowflake with the rest of their tech stacks. So some of the things that we've been working on are things like what we've been calling an event table, which lets you just store and say, hey, here's all the things that have been happening in my Snowflake account. So I can go ahead and figure out exactly what's been happening, whether I'm running a bunch of tasks, whether I'm ingesting a bunch of files, and then combining that sort of always on telemetry sort of solution, whether that's metrics, logs, trace events, combining that with some things that like native alerts and notification channels. And so these are areas where we definitely see the customer need. They want both this sort of always on telemetry. They want proactive ways to have themselves alerted and notified in case this kind of stuff happens. And so we've been building a lot of features around that, so that people can really feel like Snowflake is a place where they can do all of this. And that makes it a lot easier then for you to say, okay, great. I'm using Snowflake and PagerDuty. They work a lot better together because this fits much more in with my entire tech stack. It's not just, oh, here's one place where I have to do things. It's a single platform that works seamlessly, hopefully, with everything that you want to do. So we've got a lot more to do there, especially as customers are seeing more of the value of this and asking for more. But yeah, I think as far as observability goes, we're getting a lot more asks for being able to see what's going on with the more complex things people are doing within Snowflake.
And I would like to add, we were PagerDuty and our team was the first to jump in with happiness when we first heard that Snowflake released these observability on top of all the telemetry data, events, notifications on top of Snowflake. And we had this integration. We had a crack, what I call as a SEAL team, which immediately worked with Snowflake on that integration, because all those notifications coming in, we immediately had it piped, and we had this team internally working on that integration, and that's a natural fit, right? I mean, hundreds of customers have all these notifications if they are able to do from Snowflake, and then you have everything working on. So Snowflake, look at it this way, right? You have ecosystem of Airflow, which is a scheduling system, which or any scheduling, Airflow I take it as an example, but any scheduling system. You have data quality observability systems, you have data integration tool systems, and then a data warehouse system, which it could be Snowflake, and all these, and Snowflake being a core ecosystem partner, and all these observability signals, right, should have to come to an incident management and to a digital operation system. It has to come to a tool so that you can orchestrate and digest and provide provide a single interface to the operations team to manage RCA and do that, right? That is what modern digital operations looks like, right? And in future, if AI also is sending in the tools, and if AI or LLM models, if they are going to send hundreds and thousands of these signals where you are supposed to self-heal, right, as well as sending where these incidents are going to happen in a lot more volumes, right? There we see a lot more patterns that are going to repeat in the same way that is going to happen. That is where this Snowflake alerts and notifications became a very important part of this, what James mentioned.
Yeah,
So we were excited for that, those notifications coming from Snowflake. Actually.
Yeah, no, the passion and the excitement is coming through, and so that's like something to take note of. And to your point, where as we start to look ahead, where more folks are adopting and building with LLMs, maybe initially they're just sort of consuming through an API and they're not having to take it on directly, but eventually, they'll get to the point where they're thinking about what can we be doing to take advantage on our own data. And so this is where it'll start to come in, and making sure that your sort of data ops maturity is sufficient is going to go a long way to helping you build a resilient LLM architecture where, to your point, like even today, before you've added in LLMs, you've got, the data streaming, the data quality, the data integration, and the data warehousing pieces as just core parts of the stack. And it's tremendously valuable to have more insight into any part of those. But then at the end of the day, you need to tie it together into a single interface, right? Into like, hey, this is part of a complete breakfast, right? I don't want to just be looking at, I want to be able to drill down and look at that event table. But like, if something is off, like, am I going to know to look at the event table first? Like, how do I get started, right? When there's like, we can see something is broken, but we need to figure out where in this whole architecture, and guide me to where I should be looking more closely. That's kind of what I'm sort of hearing in terms of this, the sort of data ops maturity being almost like a prerequisite for LLMs. Let's start to dig in a little bit more in terms of, Snowflake has announced a bunch of new capabilities for folks kind of being able to extend. And I loved your comment, James, about basically make it harder to mess up, right? As like a guiding principle for what do we need to build, right? And we're trying to build things to make it harder for people to mess up. So, tell me a little bit more about what are you excited about, and how are you starting to think about this in the context of data ops?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll definitely tell you that the stuff that customers got most excited for, and the conversations that I've been having around announcements at Summit definitely are around one, being able to do a lot more in developing ML models, having what we're calling Snowpark container services, being able to do all of that within Snowflake, because they already think of Snowflake as the place where they manage a bunch of their data, and now building capabilities on top of that is very natural. The other side of the announcements that we're hearing a lot of excitement about are things like native apps, where you can build apps on top of the Snowflake data cloud. You can generate new streams of revenue with that stuff. I think these are the big announcements that, from a larger perspective, there's obviously tons of features individually announced in each of those buckets that different customers are excited about. But I think all of this comes back to, for me, the idea that you now have a single platform where you can break down these different silos. You have a simplified architecture, and that's what really allows you to get into these more complex, hairy things that we're talking about. A lot of our customers are saying, okay, I'm sort of done with the initial exploration phase of trying out this AI thing, working with LLMs, and now I want to build my own, or I want to figure out how to utilize this along with the things that we're seeing. And so, again, that comes back to us thinking a lot more about, okay, what are the things that are going to allow you to be able to actually build this with Snowflake, but also back to the data ops side, what are the things that are going to give you the kinds of alerting, notifications, observability, the kind of metrics, the kind of logs and trace events you might need to really make sure you're doing this well, and that you can rely on this. And so what I'm really excited about is that customers are actually pushing us to do more and more here. And there's a huge appetite for this that I think that's been spurred on by all of this excitement around LLMs, AI, all this stuff that we've been talking about for the past 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I can see how, like, from afar, someone looks at this and they're like, oh, container services? But is that like, it's not for just, sure, it's any container service. Like, you're really looking at solving for a particular type of use case where it's really close to the data. And that takes like, you've got a lot of domain experience, coming from Snowflake's background. And so I guess, like, what are some of those types of examples and stories where folks are kind of, what are they building with, Snowpark, and what are the types of native apps that you're seeing customers really look at?
Ooh, yeah. That's a broad question. I feel like we can go a lot of places with that. If I had to point out a few things here, I think that one of the biggest pushes that we are seeing is that there's a lot of unstructured data that our customers are having to deal with more and more, especially in the age of LLMs. They're still trying to figure out how all of this stuff works. A lot of what I think some customers are starting to think about is, how do I get value? How do I understand this unstructured data? And how can Snowflake help me do that? I think that's one of the things where we are really seeing a push there, whether that's things like having better data quality metrics, whether that's things like saying, hey, we want more LLM powered text to code ideas. These are the kinds of things that we're really seeing here. There's also, the whole world of Snowpark, which we're really excited about. We have some customers building lots of things that I don't think I can talk about yet, but I'm hoping to be able to talk about soon. Yeah, I think what the biggest thing that we found is that from the summit announcement, people are really excited to dig in and get into this. And we have had some customers working on some of this stuff already. I think really we're just hoping that we can keep up with all of the things that customers are asking us to do now that these capabilities are here. Yeah. That's the
customer
long
data
answer.
sharing was another area that I heard, which even we are also interested in, where we look at customer data sharing, where we look at sharing of some of our like using the containerized data service to share data with other customers. And we are able to insert some of the logic, like there are complex logic that is in that PagerDuty, or we are able to embed inside the data models are embedded, and we are able to share that with our customers, and that is inside a container model, and we are able to share that. So that was one of the use cases that we are also actively looking at, how to use from within containers. So there are like several ideas around that from that summit that we heard. So
Yeah,
containerization is a great idea that we are actively looking at, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Part of the way that we're thinking about it is that we want you as a Snowflake customer, or anybody who's thinking about these kind of use cases, to be able to have these container images within Snowflake where you feel like you can securely develop, you can do your compute in, and then separately, if you want to send that off, that end set of data to a native app for something to be used
Native
there, or
app,
to
absolutely.
the marketplace for data sharing, you have that ability. And again, this helps you. This helps you both limit the complexity in the areas where you don't want to make sure you're sharing just the specific things that make sense for you and for your use case. And yeah, so this is all sort of the core infrastructure that makes this kind of stuff possible. Otherwise, you might end up in a situation where you've got to put together 50 different tools just to figure out, okay, I have this interesting set of data, I want to do some compute and development on it. How do I actually get it to a point where it's usable for the end customer? Yeah, we're excited about having this infrastructure. Things like Snowpark container services allow you to make sure that you're only sharing the things that are going to be valuable, and you're not sharing anything that you don't want to be.
Yeah, it sounds like having that capability available will probably introduce use cases you haven't even thought of, but because it starts to make things a lot easier and reduces the complexity, that's, I don't know, that one of those economic laws, right? You make something more efficient and the demand just like increases to consume that efficiency, which is also supports innovation, right? Like customers are getting to doing more things with their data, and share it, appropriately with different customers. But those do also then that's something that both parties are then invested in. How do we support this on an ongoing basis? And how do we have resiliency there?
Yeah, applications, right? Data applications is another side. There are several, and James, was thinking about applications. See, when we are building data applications, right, those are like web applications.
Mhm.
Their failures becomes like web applications, like an e-commerce site. Their failures becomes an important point. How do we make sure then it's not like a database failure or a data warehouse failure. It becomes a critical part of your ecosystem. You have embedded it inside there, and it becomes a P0 system in your ecosystem, and you need it becomes a just like when your payment system fails, it is immediately a very costly affair that you need to be keeping on track of it. And we were internally thinking, if your data app where you have embedded multiple data applications together fails, how do you make sure that that is cracked? Who will take care of the failures on it? Who needs to be informed about it? Who needs to crack about it? So data applications now becomes an important ecosystem that we need to track of. And again, PagerDuty has an application, but how do we embed PagerDuty onto the data apps and then inform the data ops or the DevOps team on it? And that was something I came back from the not only the summit but internally also. When we were building data applications, we were thinking about it. So something we have to think about when we embed all these applications. I don't know whether, James, you have thought about these areas on data applications itself.
Yeah, I mean, our native apps team has definitely thought about this a lot more than I have, and they're working on a lot of the stuff that you have mentioned. I think that was a lot of the feedback from Summit. So the TLDR for native apps is that on top of Snowflake, you can build and deploy and operate and monetize these apps within the data cloud. You don't have to worry about, as a provider, you don't have to worry about securing your data, securing your IP. As a consumer, you don't have to worry about like procurement hurdles or anything like that. You can install this app directly into your Snowflake account. And so now, Manu, to your point, now you have effectively a data application you need to maintain. And so what does that mean for you being able to service that well, right? People will have the same expectations if they're consuming this app as they would as if they were, visiting Facebook or Instagram or using any other web app or anything like that. Yeah. And so that is a lot of what we're working on there. I think this comes back to part of the observability stuff. This comes back to better tooling to be able to diagnose some of this stuff, being able to test and build and deploy better, as well as see what's happening when you're in production. So I think this ties back to all the themes that we talked about, especially around the observability side and us driving more and more capabilities there. So it's easier for you to see this as, hey, I can treat this the same way that I treat any other sort of thing that I would treat with DevOps, right? I have all the same tools. I have all the same ways of managing this.
Yeah, I think this kind of like, just to put a fine point on it, when you look back to the olden days, right, of your BI tools and reporting, there wasn't as much urgency when the data was, shipping sort of slowly in batch, and it was being consumed in reports on like a periodic basis. When you shift towards, this is something that it's feeding into an application. It's a data application in itself. Suddenly, and it's being powered by streaming data. suddenly, like, you have a lot more urgency around if something goes wrong. This isn't just like, well, if the report's not available, the person will just check back the next day, because that's what a report does. It's just sitting there for you to look at. But the stakes change, right? When you're now,
Not just the data app, which is real time. This is being powered by real time data on one side and powered by AI on certain aspects of it.
yeah,
So you have AI which is predicting or summarizing, and on one side giving you information on what can happen, summarizing it, and then there is data science model which is recommending things, and you have data which is giving you real time, and that all is coming together on this data app, which is your web app, which is your real time system.
yeah,
That is a huge critical uh, a system that you have put in front of your user, and that is where it is. It's a dangerous system, and you need to be really really on top of it. And if it goes down, you are going to lose dollars there, right there.
yeah.
I
It's no longer just a back end report that's
No, it's
yes.
not.
fresh later.
It's not.
Yeah.
To me, the exciting thing about this stuff is that I think maybe in years past, I think people would have been shying away from this, saying it's too complex, it's too hard to do. There's not enough in place to do it, and now people are running towards it because they
Yeah,
see a lot of the value. They're
right.
excited to do some of this stuff, and the kinds of things that I get asked about are really more along the lines of, hey, we definitely want to do this thing. I want these 20 things to be able to do this better and easier, because they see the value. And so it's
Value.
really
Yes.
not so much a conversation about should you do this. It's much more around, I want to do this. How can you help me get there in a way that makes sense and that I can make possible?
Yeah.
Yes. No, the no. Let me classify it. It is not a when I see, it is an absolute need is there, right? There is a data app which is required. Earlier also the data app was coming together, but it never made it into a data app because streaming was not possible in the way it was possible. Now you have the so many systems like Kafka and so on, and so many streaming possibilities was not possible earlier. Now it is possible to stream in it. There is Streamlit, which has come. Snowflake has released that. AI systems which can give you real time recommendations and summarization. So there's so many technologies which are converging together to make that data app possible now. So that has made it possible. So we just need to make sure that the rigor around maintaining it has to be possible. So yeah, exciting things coming together. Yeah.
And this kind of comes to, I think, maybe to sort of closing thoughts for each of you is, again, in this sort of mode of looking ahead to, hey, we want to start to do more with generative AI, that may, like, in its more mature states, involve building architectures with LLMs, but even its more immature states may still involve, like introducing kind of a new element on the other side of an API into your app architecture that's very data intensive. What's kind of like words of wisdom that you would leave with folks to think about, hey, how do you go into this with sort of the benefit of data ops? What would you suggest for folks?
I go with that all LLMs, any LLM systems, the base foundation is the data, and data remains the foundation of these LLMs. So it is absolutely essential that the foundational elements of maintaining that data quality and data observability, those foundational systems need to be correct around data governance and data security. That has to be that foundations have to be correct in your ecosystem. That is number one. There's no substitute for that. number one. And once that is correct, the second part of it is within your LLMs and data models and everything, there is always a case of um, there are LLMs are all a learning models, right? There are always PagerDuty, for example, has been working on machine learning models for like years. Like we have 10 years of data on incidents, events, and other things. And what we have seen is over a period of time, the assumptions that we have made around data has always changed, and that is going to happen even for the new LLMs as well. And so we need to have the control set for data. So for example, last 1 year or 3 year back, we made certain assumptions around the data that may not be relevant for us. For example, 3 year back, we made an assumption that acknowledgement rate is important. But 3 years afterwards, we might have found out that acknowledgement rate for high priority is more important. So that has changed over a period of time. Now, a learning model would have, if we don't have actual controls over a period of time, right, we wouldn't have identified that. And it is so important that we identify these data groups that are happening. And it is more important that we put the controls over it, right? So it is very important that we identify these groups that are happening in the group, in the data. We identify the downstream data groups that are happening, and those systems need to be put in place. And it needs human interference in some cases. It needs automatic healing at some places where we need automatic systems that can heal. So um, those controls need to be put in place. So those two things, we need to have a good controls in place. And for these, we need modern tools like PagerDuty, Snowflake, and so there are so many data operations tools that we have in place for this. So I'll leave it with these two thoughts in place.
Yeah, I think that's really a gift, right? Just to your point that, this is coming from, PagerDuty, your experience with PagerDuty over years of work on machine learning and feeding into, things like our AI ops solution. And that point about just your assumptions are going to change. So you need to have your control data. That's a great just pearl of wisdom, I think, for folks to remember as they're starting to look at, hey, what data sets can we feed into an LLM? And what we're going to get out of it now, like in 2 years, there might be something different that you need to do. So thank you. James, how about you? What's something that what's a pearl of wisdom you can leave with the audience today?
I mean, I don't know if I can match up to what Manu said, but to me, I think it's important to recognize that regardless of the kind of workload you're thinking about, whether you're talking about just strict data engineering for your traditional use cases, whether you're thinking now about building applications, whether you're thinking about this now in the AI and ML space, similar to what Manu said, the fundamentals remain the same, right? Like you want to make sure that regardless of the workload that you have a well thought out system that handles all the kinds of things that are going to be the same across all of these different use cases. And you might find things that are new or different about working with LLMs or working with AI, but I don't think we're yet at a point where we're saying, hey, this is like a fundamental change in how you do everything. It's more about, hey, you can now do additional new exciting things that maybe weren't possible before, but you still need to make sure you have a good grasp of all the fundamentals, that it works with how your organization works, that it works with your tech stack. I think that's the place where you start. And if you feel like you have confidence there, then the rest is the new exciting stuff you get to tinker on. If you don't have that in place, then it starts to get quite hairy very, very quickly. So yeah, for me, it's about making sure you have the fundamentals in place. You have the right things to be able to take on this new and exciting space with the confidence that all the stuff that you consider to be core is already dealt with.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important point for folks to remember, and hopefully this has been useful for our audience. I want to thank both of you for joining us today. Remind folks that join us next week, July 24th. Yes, July 24th, for Heath Newburn, who's going to be talking about defining AI ops as a word that's been both like loved and hated, I think. So, and I think it's even relevant here in terms of something that's been applied to web applications and other applications. And how are we even thinking about applying that in the context of data ops with increasingly complex data architectures that are feeding real-time applications and in the critical path for business. So, thank you again, gentlemen, for joining me here on the Unplanned Show. Have an
Oh, thank
day.
you.
Thanks for
It was
having
a
me.
pleasure meeting both of you.
Awesome. Bye now.